Hello and welcome to another episode of Five Alarm Task Force. I'm your host, Steve Green. Happy to be here with you. Happy to have you here with us. And our guest today is someone I've been after since 2018. So 6 years. I've been trying to get this gentleman on. I met him at my first Great Florida Fire School. I went into his class a little bit, listened to what he was teaching, watched him outside. Uh, what he was teaching, and just a nice guy. And most of us are as firefighters because whether men and women doesn't make any difference. We take an oath to protect the people. We don't take an oath about fighting with ourselves and not arguing. That's how it has to be. And we'll be talking about that with our guest, uh, Captain Ron Givens, as I said. So Ron started the fire service at the age of 16 years old as a junior firefighter in the Bayshore area of New Jersey. Oh my goodness, right near Nick Higgins. A fifth-generation firefighter and a long student of the craft. Ron now resides in sunny Southwest Florida, is on the job and has been on the job there for 16 years. And he is currently the engine captain on a busy suburban department just outside the city of Fort Myers. I got to tell you, folks, I've been there for several of the conferences. And if you haven't been to the greater Fort Myers area, you got to go. It's a beautiful part of Florida that only really the residents there know the secrets of its beauty and what it has to offer. You come across from the east side of Florida, like I did, and you see a whole new world open up in front of you. It really is terrific. Ron has come up through the ranks, became a training division shift coordinator, and is currently an assumable battalion chief on the A shift. He holds an associate's in fire science from Edison State College. He is Florida paramedic certified, numerous state fire inspector, instructor, and officer certificates. And he has taught at several fire service conferences, departmental classes on cadre with Shut Up and Train, Build Your Culture, Station Pride, and Tick Tips. Ron has recently become a dealer rep with AEST, Fire and Safety. We're going to ask you before the show's over to explain that business. 239 fire training and consulting. His passions include spending time with his family and making the fire service better. If you're watching the video, you see probably one of the munchkins of the Gibbons family right in that. In that back picture there. His passion includes spending time with his family and making the fire service better. And that's what we're going to be talking about. He works to make sure the newer generation is given the knowledge, skills, and abilities needed to make it along their career path and become better tomorrow than they are today. I could not think of a better reason for you joining me, what we're going to talk about with that pledge. Because all too often, as you and I both know, it's the newcomers, the newbies, the probies that always get a ration of crap thrown at them. But you have a totally different aspect to that. And, that's what we want to talk about. But let's start at the beginning. You've, like you said, nearly 20 years, nearly 2 decades in the fire service down here. And let alone the years you had up in the Bayshore area in Jersey. So I think that we'll start with a topic that you actually wrote here is relationship building, getting to know your crew as a person more so than a coworker. Let's talk about that.
Well, Steve, thank you very much for having me on. First off, I really appreciate you chasing and hunting me down for so long. I'm sorry I couldn't get on before then, but life and family and work and everything else, But I'm really happy to be on here. I greatly appreciate the opportunity.
Thank you. Our pleasure.
Yeah. So I thought long and hard about what we can talk about. As one of my biggest, I guess, fears of stepping foot into a podcast area of what am I going to talk about? I talk about myself. I don't want to talk about myself. I don't want to talk about the job, So I could talk about being a mentor. I could talk about leadership, but I feel like it's like over talked about almost a little bit, So I just figured out, let me just talk about what I do at the Firehouse. So as a captain in my department, like a captain anywhere. I mean, your job is to make sure everybody goes home safe. You
Right.
got the people on your engine or the people on your crew that you're responsible for. Um, and it, I feel like you're not only responsible to make sure they go home, you're responsible to make sure they're well taken care of, well represented, and not they're there for the right reasons. So one of my biggest things I wanted to talk about was relationship building because I want to make sure people understand that as an officer, a company officer especially, in order to be able to stand up and to understand the way that your crew members think and are going to act at the fire ground, you kind of need to know how they act and think off the fire ground because 95% of our time together is in the firehouse. I mean,
Right.
we'll run calls here and there. And you through training, you know what they're going to think and do on the fire ground, but you got to know them before the fire ground first. So one of my biggest things is relationship building. Anytime I get a new member into my station, whether they're a senior person or they're brand new rookie out of fire school, you have to understand who they are as a person. So one thing I like to do is sit everybody down. I give them I call them my rules of engagement, so that they understand the expectations of what I'm thinking on the job. I need to know who they are as a person, what they, I'll find out what they know the longer that they're at my station, fire service wise. But I want to know, do they live at home? What their are they? Do they have a girlfriend? What's their girlfriend's name? What's your wife's name? What's your kids' names? When's their birthdays? I want to be part. I want to make them part of my family. And they say the fire service is your second family. So how can it be your second family if you don't? Hey, your wife's birthday's coming up. Oh shoot, I forgot. Or hey, you having is your daughter selling Girl Scout cookies this year, or is there a birthday party coming up for your little one? I try to attend as much as I can
I
because
find that very interesting because of the first department I was in was a volunteer department down in North Carolina. A little strange, of course, because the kid I met there was still my best in 77, still my best friend today. Um, but the fact that when I got into that department, I had no firefighting background. I just had every badge that the first aid, Red Cross gave you to senior first aid. I was a water safety instructor, but I was a little bit concerned. We never had any anti-Semitism with him, my buddy, and me. Nobody ever was that. There were some jokes, but they were all in good taste. But they set up there in this volunteer. We had like four paid people. One was a secretary, one was the mechanic, and the three caretakers who worked 24 on, 48 off. And their job was to get the first apparatus out until the rest of us got down there to take the rest out. But right away, we were invited to a little welcome party. Um, and there was a wife's auxiliary. They were all together. We were all together. And it was just um, a wonderful, welcoming atmosphere. Now, my buddy Rich, who's north up in the Greater Gainesville area, uh, chief pilot up there, and we were both kind of like, "Wait a second, are we up north still, or these people are being nice?"
Mhm.
And they were, and they were just as open, as cordial. Yeah, was there some ribbing and joking? Yeah, but never was in bad taste. And we both became friends with most of the guys, all the paid people, and most of the rest of the volunteers. And I think that what you just said is that step, and they do it. And the fact that you're in a career department, um, and that's still your aim as one of the captains. I think that's amazing in today's world, especially. I'm talking about back nearly 50 years ago when I was in. Um, but to hear it today in 2024, a well-seasoned firefighter who's now an officer says, might be an officer, might be a career department, doesn't mean we treat people like crap here. Everyone's going to become part of this family.
Yeah. And that's the main thing is that if we're going to be a family, we have to be with a family at home. We have to be a family at work. We have to be a family, whether you're at the firehouse as a volunteer or whatever. And one of the greatest things in my career that I appreciate is the memory. It was the 4 short years that I was a volunteer up in New Jersey, and that mind frame is completely different than fire service in a career department. Because I mean, it's your life. Like the firefighters that are true firefighters. I know I'm ate up, and there's a lot of guys that are just as ate up, if not more than me. But you
That's
need to.
exactly the same term we use down in North Carolina then.
Yeah.
He's all eat up with it, you know?
I am. And it becomes your life. It becomes, when you're driving down the street and you see a new house being built, it's like, I want to go in there just to look at the trusses to see how the trusses are being built or how lightweight are the stairs now with OSB construction. They're making them lighter weight. Well, that's great for when they're not under fire conditions. Like how many times can you say I'm going into these houses on my street that are being built at home? I tell my kids, hey, sit in the car. I'm gonna be right back. I'm gonna go look how this roof is made or something. It's just on duty, off duty, whenever it is. And that's the mentality I was given when I was 16 years old. When I started the fire service up in New Jersey for 4 years, it was just no matter the time, day or night, when that pager goes off, you're a fireman. It's go time. It's not just 8 a.m. to 8 a.m. or 4896 work schedule. It's it's go time. Any time of the day. Most even businesses allow volunteer firemen to leave work if they get a fire. And that's pretty cool. I don't know anywhere else in the country that does it, but I know up north it happens a lot.
Oh, yeah. Yeah.
But you know, and unfortunately, the volunteer fire service, the numbers are decreasing rapidly. That they're trying to stay active. They're trying to get enough members, but to get a fire in the middle of the day, sometimes they only got two guys on the truck and they have to leave. So it's unfortunate, but that's just the fire service we live in. And then it was a whole different, mind frame shift when I became a career fireman down in Florida, because the very first thing that would come out of my mouth when I was a rookie was, "Yeah, we did it like this in New Jersey."
Oh, no.
Apparently, you're not supposed to say that. Apparently, you're not. I learned that real quick. So it only took me once to realize, but I really quickly realized it's a different mentality when you're working, when you're career. And I didn't want to. I never turned it off at 8 a.m. when I was going home. I always fire service is my life. I'm a fifth generation, like you said a little while ago, and I have a couple badges here. We all have badges of honor, but so 4 generations ago, I have a badge here from in New Jersey. My main fire service in New Jersey. Oh, see it? We could see
Yeah.
it before.
Yeah. Keep
Uh-oh.
it. There we go. Well, yeah. Oh, now you both disappeared. There we go. Hand over
Boom.
neck.
Hanover Neck. So in New Jersey, there was a fire department that started in 1919, and my great grandfather, I think, he started it in 1919. He was one of the co-founders, the founding fathers of the fire department there, where it's not even a fire department anymore. It was taken over by East Hanover Fire Department, which they're now, I believe, a paid department. But that badge is in 2019. That badge became 100 years old. And then my grandfather, this was his hat badge in Kenilworth, New Jersey. So I keep these badges in, they're locked in a little container. But the Hanover Neck one, especially, this badge has been in my pocket or on the table at every one of my promotional assessment centers. And anytime I took a written test to promote, or when I interviewed for the job, anytime something big comes up, I put that badge in my pocket just as kind of a good luck charm to remember my roots.
Yeah.
You know, I don't
That's a
have,
great thing to do.
yeah, I don't have my father's badge yet. He's still holding on to it, but one day I'll have that to add to the collection.
That's great.
So it's pretty cool.
It is.
But
It
yeah,
is.
the fifth generation, I don't have a badge from before then, but I mean, I got a 100-year-old one, so I'm doing pretty good.
Yeah. That is terrific. I know when my mom, may she rest in peace, my parents, we didn't tell her about when I joined the volunteer fire department. They lived up in the Boston area. And I told my brothers and my dad, I said, don't tell mom because she'll have a hissy fit, you know. And so everything was going well until they were getting ready to move to Florida. And my younger brother drove him down from Boston to Greensboro. Unfortunately, I still had my car in the parking lot. My old Dodge Dart, red. When I bought it off my secretary, she offered it to me, and I had talking about heat up. They said you could have a fireball, in the dash. Well, then one of the guys in our mechanic said, "Well, you can have more than that." Next thing I know, I have a 4 bulb on the top on the roof. I have 2 wigwags in the front of the car and 2 wigwags in the back window. So we used to call it being eat up with it. This was what we said. But for the most part, now this is way back when, and we didn't have Q. Our chief didn't want Qs. He thought they were too much of a battery drain. I said, that's why we have a second generator and an alternator. It's for a Q. That's what they're good for. And so the electronic sirens weren't quite as loud as they are today. We had Federals, but most of the time the people would move over when they saw the lights and the sirens coming, and whoever was sitting in the right seat, and I had to fill in there several times. But you mentioned something earlier about changing departments and from volunteer to career. I changed from volunteer in North Carolina to a volunteer upstate New York. Now I came in there, I'd gone to this North Carolina State Fire College, got certified by the state college in basic firemanship 1 and 2 that we had in those days. Hydraulics pump operator, passed that, and high-level rescue. That's what I came in with. I also could drive our rescue. I could drive either the engines. I could drive the snorkel, all certified by the state and the department. Went up to that department in New York, sat down with the chief, my application, told him what I've accomplished. He goes, okay, that's great. That's great. You'll be a big asset here. Couldn't get on anything basically initially except the rescue. Would not let me, they would not teach me how to drive those apparatus. Oh, yes, Steve, you could drive the Suburban though, when we need to take extra people to the scene. I said, okay. All right, so that's the way it's going to be. And there was a clique in that group, and the clique was a bunch of the guys right up the street from walking maybe a quarter mile north of the station was a pub, the dark room. And after every drill or every meeting, that's where the big boys went up to.
Yeah.
If you didn't hang out with the big boys, you didn't do
You
it.
weren't a big boy.
Yeah, I was nominated for officer numerous times, and the clique banded together and dropped it. So then I got hurt with my knee, and I couldn't fight fire anymore. So the chief offered me the fire inspector's position. So I went for classes and that, and then I was an inspector for the next 14 months or so. Wasn't the same,
No.
but as I just saw somebody say on, I think it was 911, which I haven't normally watched, but I happened to catch it that day. He says, we're firefighters. Once you're a firefighter, you're always a firefighter. Whether you're 16 or you're 85, you're still a firefighter. And people ask me, why are you still into it? I said, because it's who I am. It's who I am. A doctor can't undo being a doctor after all those years, medical school and stuff like that. So I'm just a firefighter. That's what I was. It was a good one, but that was it. And you can see the difference between how the two departments treated newcomers. One with open arms and glad to have you, even though you don't know jack about firefighting, hand tools very well and stuff like that. And then the one I had in New York, which was totally different, totally stop sign up every time, and that can be very detrimental, not only to that person, but to the department as well. Because if you treat somebody that way, they're going to tell others about that way. And there goes your recruitment for more volunteers. Why should I go to that department but it's all locked up in the clique, you know, and we can't have that, especially today. We can't afford to have that. And I think what you're talking about is so damn important that both career and volunteer part pay people listening to this, watching this audio, watching the video or listening to the audio version, they have to understand how important this one aspect is to the survivability of that firehouse.
Mhm.
Right.
Mhm.
And I'm sure you've seen where your kind of thoughts are not in place at that firehouse, and you see the difference.
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah.
Right.
So, yeah, absolutely.
And that, again, that can be a big turnoff. So when you're recruiting, whether you're recruiting career people or you're recruiting um, trying to get more volunteers in, if they don't find a warm, welcoming, accepting welcome when they go to that department,
They're not going to want to be there.
they're not going to want to be there. You know, I think you know Jacob Johnson, right?
Hmm.
Assistant chief. Jacob's a great guy. I've learned so much from him. We've become dear friends. And he says, you know, I said, how do you keep getting people into Pearland? Because yeah, but they're lined up the door. I said, what would you say is the main reason why you don't have recruitment problems? Because we treat them like family.
Yep. The culture.
The culture.
They
That's
want
what
it.
it is.
Hmm.
You know, in life, we all have different educational backgrounds, stuff like that. It doesn't mean one of us is better than the other. One of us knows more than the other, that's for sure. I'm not a medical doctor, but working as a firefighter medic and then working as the administrator for a large family practice and the triage director there, I've got my background. I know what I can do. I also know what I can't do. Now, I've stopped ever since I was injured in 85. I have always maintained a full BLS pack in my car, a rescue bag with extra gloves, with utility gloves, ropes, tie-offs. And so I keep that with me because I've wound up, my family says probably in those years, and I still do it, not that I really should with my health issue, but um, I've stopped over 200 times as the first or second person on scene of an emergency. I've had a fight with state police who says, you can't do this. I said, you have this badge and this certification? He goes, no. I said, well, I do. So until you do, just keep out of my way, make sure the traffic is out of the area, and I'll take care of them until EMS gets here.
Mhm.
So people have their own egos that they want to fill. And I understand that. I'm just not one of those people.
Yeah.
I know who I am. I know what I know. I don't presume to know anything else about medicine other than the very basics. But I knew at that first apartment, it was a good place for me.
Yeah.
Yeah. And so when I got up to New York and I saw right around the corner from my house, another brick building, and my wife saw me smiling. She goes, what are you smiling at? Did you see that red brick building? I said, yes. She goes, oh, no, not
I
again.
know what's going there.
Yeah.
Mhm.
So I think one of the most important things that you just said was you sit down with the person who's coming onto your crew, and you don't just sit there to quiz them. You sit there to shoot the bull with them, learn about them, what are their likes, dislikes, what
Yep.
made them want to join the fire department. Do they know what they're getting into? Yeah, you know, you might get a little razzing as a newbie, but you know, just know that I'm your captain, and I'll be always keeping an eye out for you until
Mhm.
you really get to that get past that pro level.
Yeah.
That's so important. That's so important. And that really to that person, they have a feeling of belonging when you sit down. And they see that you're not quizzing them as an officer, you're trying to talk to them as a co-family member of that department.
Mhm.
I think that carries a lot of weight.
Oh yeah, for sure. And it's not that I do it because I was told to do it. It's one of those things that over the course of however many years, I've been I've been an officer for 5 years, but an acting officer for several years before that. And I was I was in I was inherited a baton from the older generation that has now left. And in order to pass that baton on to the next generation, I need to make sure that one, they earn it, and two, that the baton is ready to be passed on. Because if it's not, if the knowledge and the wisdom and the tradition of the firehouse hasn't been instilled in the next generation, then that baton gets dropped. You
Right.
know, it doesn't get passed on like it was to me, and that's, you got to make that baton worth passing on to the next generation. And you only have so many years. Like we all, they say the fire service is a 25-year or 20-year profession, but it goes quick. And I've always been told it goes quick. And here I am, 16 years on the job, and I'm on 9 years left of my career. Um, it does go quick. And I mean, I got guys that are coming in that weren't even alive during 9/11. And I mean, I watched 9/11 over the Raritan Bay, the smoke for days, if
Yeah.
not weeks. And while everyone was working the pile, like we could smell it from the town I was in. And you got guys that are coming in the fire service right now that weren't even alive then. So it's young, it's well, they're youth and they don't have life experience. So our job here isn't only giving them fire service experience. It's not only making sure they can pull a line and hit a hydrant and do a search, but you're also teaching them how to use the tools in the toolbox. You're also teaching them, you know, um, different ways to run a generator, or how to run a saw, or how to change the blade on a saw. Like you're teaching them life experiences. And more so, you got guys that are coming in that have like, hey, I've never had a girlfriend. Can you guys help me? Like, all right, well, life experience time, now we're teaching you something in life. And, um, being there for somebody because they don't have anybody at home, or they're moved out and their parents have moved away or whatever. It's like, I can tell you need help. Like, hey man, let's talk to you. We can either sit in my office or we can sit at the firehouse kitchen table. We're probably going to mess with you a little bit about, trying to find girls, but we could help you. Like, we're older. Some of us are married, some of us aren't. And it's just kind of like, we're teaching this kid how to become a boyfriend. You can't just say, and this is more than mentorship in the fire service, it's mentorship in life. Like, you're
Right.
being a parent figure to this kid. And that's why I think it's so important, because you're molding this guy's brain, into being an adult and how to be an adult. There's some guys that are like, hey, I've never gone to college. I'd like to go get my degree. Okay, well, I have a degree. Let me kind of push you in the right way of how we find a college, how we're going to get signed up, what do we go through with admissions, and you know, um, there's guys that don't have guidance counselors anymore. They're not in high school no more, so you have to be their guidance counselor.
Right. Right.
Um, and if it takes me as an officer to do that, I'll absolutely do that. And my senior guys, my engineer's he's been in the fire service for I think 12 years, 10 years. So he's been around. He's a little bit older than I am. He started a little later than I did, but I mean, I bounce stuff off of him all the time, because he's got kids that are, his youngest son just graduated high school like last week, and his oldest daughter graduated a couple years ago, and I got kids coming up getting ready to start high school. So I bounce stuff off of him like, hey man, you need to teach me something about this 12-year-old, because my son's getting ready to be a teenager, and what am I missing here? And he's always giving me advice or doing whatever. But it's really important to spend time. It takes time to earn someone's respect and earn someone's wanting to come to you in faith, with being able to teach them life skills and work skills. And it takes, I mean, we have bowling nights, we have golf outings, we have Christmas parties, we do everything together. Summertime, they'll have a pool party at one fireman's house, then we'll have a pool party the next weekend at somebody else's house. So we're always together. Our families are together, our wives hang out together. So
Yep. That's where it was for us in North Carolina. Just the
yeah.
same thing. Picnics, shared birthday parties, even for the kids, everybody was invited, stuff like that. That's it. And before we take a break, I want to
Hmm.
talk about this other sentence that goes to that is you must be there for your guys and gals, no matter the circumstances. And I think that's also very, very important, is that these people, whether they're new or they've got 3 years under their belts or 5 years under the belt, when you're the captain of that ship, they need to know that it's safe to come to you,
Hmm.
and to their officer, and that officer doesn't just care about what they do getting on the rig or on the scene. They want to know how you're doing in general. How is life going for you? And the very fact that you posit this, there are many, I will assume, we know what assume does, but
Hmm.
that really don't care about that part. When
Yeah.
you're on your shift, I'll tell you what to do. You have a question about what I've told you to do, come to me. Otherwise, leave me alone.
Yeah.
That does not foster a healthy relationship with that
No.
firefighter.
And it might work for them, but it doesn't. That's not something that I live by. I
Yeah,
made sure. I was at one of our Christmas parties one year, and I had a rookie fireman that was in the orientation. My department does a 2 month orientation before they get on shift on an engine. They do Monday through Friday for 2 months, and they run through a a bunch of topics. They have a bunch of written tests and practical tests to test out of the orientation, and then they come on shift with us. And he just found out his shift assignment was going to be my station, my shift, and he found out I was going to be his officer. And in doing that, he ended up telling his family. He was second generation. His dad is one of our battalion chiefs too, so um, on a different shift. So he was coming to me, and I happened to be at the Christmas party, and his grandfather came up to me and said, "Ron, I hear you're going to be so and so. I don't want to say his name. I hear you're going to be his captain, and I just want to ask you one thing: don't get him hurt." And I said, "Well, sir, I can't guarantee you I'm not going to get him hurt, but I can guarantee you if he gets hurt, I'm going to be laying in the hospital bed next to him because we're all human. We could make mistakes. I could make a mistake that is detrimental to our health, but if he's getting hurt, so am I because I'm going to be in there with him." And I think that was one thing that kind of, and he just said, "Thank you. You understand what I'm saying?" And I'm like, "Yeah, I understand absolutely what you're saying. He's your grandson, but it's a dangerous job he signed up for, but I'm there for him. If
right,
he's getting hurt, it's because I brought him in too far, or I did something stupid, or I made a mistake, and you know, I won't leave him."
right.
So,
I was just thinking of a story, but it slipped my mind. Maybe I'll bring it back in the second half.
mhm.
All right, so folks, we're going to take a quick break. If you're watching the video, you won't see anything change, won't see anything different. Those of you listening to the audio version of the podcast, well, it's going to be a couple of public service announcements for the fire service and for our listenership in general. And then we're going to be right back with Ron Givens as we talk more about the humanistic side of being an officer and how you build cohesion with the people on your shift so that they don't just feel like they're robot firefighters. They're humans. They have their good times. They have their bad times. And this is so important, especially in today's fire service, both career, volunteer, part pay, even WUI is in the same boat as the rest of us are. And we're going to be talking about how to continue to be a human officer or firefighter. Speaking of the Devils, station right quarter of a mile down the street, they come by, Station 64, it's got a brand new station. But I think that's what we need to focus on. And I think this is the first time that we've actually had this kind of discussion on the show. So it's very important to me, for our listeners, and what an opportunity to have you with us, Ron. So, folks, we're going to be right back right after these words. As always, please stay tuned. Hello, and welcome back to this episode of Five Alarm Task Force. My guest today is a gentleman I met back in 2017, 7 years ago, man, almost 7 years ago, and at the first great renewal of the Great Florida Fire School. And I watched him work. I listened to him talk a little bit, and I really kind of liked his way. Our guest Ron is a big, burly guy, but he's a pussycat when he talks with and cares about the people he works with, cares about the citizens in his community. And that's something that sadly too many of us have lost. The shine has come off the front of the hood on our apparatus, and we can't let that happen. So in the second segment with Ron, he posits the fact that making the fire service better each and every time you arrive at the firehouse. Being someone worth being. All right, so how would you define this, making the fire service better each and every time you arrive at the firehouse?
I mean, that's the ultimate goal of being being there for people and being, I don't want to say a mentor because that's like so cliche. There's mentors in the fire service that people seek out, and then there's mentors in the fire service that are told that they have to be mentors. And
Right.
it's almost like an arranged marriage. Like it's not going to work out. You can't tell me who I'm going to love. Um, but being a mentor and being someone worth being is when the new guys come in, or even someone that's been there and is becoming a seasoned firefighter, they look up to certain individuals based on how they act on duty and off duty, based on what they know, what they do, what their experiences are in life and in the resume, And if you're a good person, people that want to be good people come to you for help. So, like I was talking about guys looking for girlfriends, or guys looking for, schooling opportunities, or wanting to go to conferences, and just being a conference instructor in the past, some people have no idea how to sign up for a conference. So that's part of the being someone worth being is when I became an officer, a little bit of advice that my dad told me was be the officer you always wish you had. And I had good officers in the past, I've had bad officers in the past, and just know the difference between what a bad one did, and don't do that yourself, and then what the good ones did, and make sure you do that with your crew, you know, and you stay out of trouble. Sometimes trouble seems to find the ones that bark the most, in my department, I tend to bark. I'm kind of one of those that live by the old saying, it's better to ask for forgiveness than ask for permission. But you know what? Sometimes that's better for the crew, because you roll up, you're trying to figure out a drill for the day, and there's an abandoned house in the corner. Hey, let's go throw a ladder at the abandoned house. Well, then the chief gets a hold of it, or someone took a picture, and he's asking, hey, who do you have permission from to throw a ladder at that house? Yeah, but chief, listen, two guys in the back seat haven't thrown ladders in 6 months, and they just got the ability to throw ladders. I understand it might have been something I shouldn't have done, but it helped us. I consider that more of a help than a hindrance.
Right.
And then usually they're okay, no problem. But to those two guys that haven't thrown ladders in 6 months, that's huge, because the officer stopped what he was doing on the way back from a medical run, found an abandoned house, went out of his way, took time to make sure they get their hands on a ladder, go up the ladder, do a leg lock, go on the roof, whatever. I did that for those two guys, and it's something that they're going to remember me by, is being someone worth being there for them when they asked for a little bit of help, you know? And that's the officer I wanted and had in coming up through my years, is you're there for your guys. Sometimes it's not convenient for everybody. And sometimes it takes a little bit of a written apology or a phone call, but my guys got an opportunity and they took it, and I took it with them. I made it happen, and then it made them better. And
Right.
that's all I'm here for. That's the job of an officer, is to make your people better.
Right. And the good thing is the fact that if you hadn't done that, in the next shift, you had a call with these two firefighters on the engine with you. and they don't know how to throw those ladders, professionally.
Confidently. Yep.
You know, we all had to learn from the small ladder to the 35-footer. We had, in my day back in Greensboro, we had one wooden ladder, and all the rest were aluminum. But the 35 was a wooden ladder. So that took several of us to move over, bring it. But you know what? We only did it three times in the 4 years I was there, but we did it right 3 times. And that was, it was grueling hot in Greensboro, and nobody wanted to start doing that. But it's a good thing we did.
Mhm.
Good thing we did, because we knew now how to do it. And we didn't have any kids at that point, and my wife also worked. So I spent basically as much free time as I could. My lunch hour because I was a professional, I was working at a synagogue as the educational and youth director. But lunch, I'd always grab something and eat it at the kitchen table at the Firehouse right down the street. And that showed both our career people, the on-duty caretaker, and the chief and the captain who were around during that time. That showed my dedication to the task. It's not just being there on a call, but hanging around the Firehouse. And they want to learn more about me. And even one of the caretakers came to me one day when I had lunch, and he says, "Hey, I want to get something kosher for you, because you talk about you only eat kosher." And it's only a can of beans, but I think I have the right symbol on it. So I look at it. I says, "Where's the symbol, Bruce?" He says, "Well, it's right there next to the name." I said, "That's a circle R." He goes, "Yeah." He goes, "Isn't that it?" I said, "No, that means the registered trademark of the company." I said, "But if it's a U inside of a round letter, then that's how you know it's kosher. It has a big fat K on it." He goes, "Oh man, I'm sorry." I said, "Don't be sorry." I said, "That was one of the most wonderful gifts you could have given me, is you went out of your way with all the joking around, because I wouldn't eat oysters at the business meeting. But I said, it showed me that you really cared. So don't be upset with it. I'm fine with it." I said, "Just no, you may be better because of having me do this. And I'm fine with that." And then they did that. I had never changed. I had put in gas, I put in oil. I never changed my oil yet. So one of the day guys who became really a close friend, and definitely our mentor for Rich and me, he said, "Well, I'll show you. Can you come down Saturday afternoon?" I said, "Sure." Came down Saturday afternoon. He took out the creeper, took out the tarps. We had the wash pit on the side of the back of the building. And he said, "Okay, so here's a wrench to undo the nut." He says, "Okay." He says, "Now, okay, it's all set for you. So just go ahead and take that nut out." And of course, my face was right under the hole. And I thought, yeah, got a face full of oil. And I'm sputtering. And so he's laughing, and I was going to wet his pants. And then I started laughing too, because it was funny. That was my baptism, you know? But from that moment on, he helped Rich and me anything and everything we wanted to learn. He was great. He wasn't an officer. He had been in the Air Force as a firefighter for 4 years. Then he got that job, and one of the caretakers. But he's always looked out, not just for Rich and me, but other newcomers who came in. He was always there to say, "Hey, I'm Bruce. I'm Roger," and because you have questions, you need anything, come to me. I work 1 day on, 2 days off. But he goes, "I live right up the street in case there's an emergency. You need me, come." And that's the kind of guy he was. So he welcomed every new person coming in, whether on his first shift, seeing them. And I spoke to some of the other guys over those early months. They said, "This guy Roger is terrific. He just asked me if I had questions or need any help with learning stuff." I said, "Yeah, I know. He's just terrific." And I used that as a model because he wasn't an officer. He was just a caretaker, 24 on, 48 off to get, their job was to get the first apparatus out the door. Okay. Uh, and he still made time for newbies like me and Rich and all the ones that came after us. And that showed me there, especially at the beginning, how much they care about their people who come in. We didn't have a problem with recruitment in those days. But not everybody made it who wanted to join. I remember when I first met the chief, he gave me that envelope, and I said, "What's this?" He goes, "Well, just take it and read it, and you'll see." He says, "But Mr. Green, I will tell you this." I said, because with his southern drawl, he goes, "If you want to be a firefighter in this department, Mr. Green, you're going to have to take a step or two closer to your razor blade." Now, I had a full beard, and I didn't know why. And I said, "Yeah, what's that about?" He goes, "Well, we have these masks." And sure enough, there's the captain, brings out a CBA, and he says, this rubber rim, has to be flush to your skin so you don't get noxious fumes and smoke inside your mask. If you have a beard, it's not going to work. A little mustache, he says, it's fine, but a beard can't. I said, no problem. Went home that night, shaved the beard, opened up the envelope. It was the enrollment application. So I spoke
Nice.
with my wife over dinner, and she said, "Look, you want to try it? Give it a try." And I did. I never looked back.
Awesome.
So, and that's what you're talking about doing. You're the same thing. You're the new iteration of my friend Roger, because you care about not who walks through the door, how they walk through the door, what they do know, what they don't know. You see your job as, I got to welcome them, make them feel part of this family. Over time, it's not going to happen first two shifts, but I want them to feel comfortable that they can come to me with issues, never to be afraid about that. Just come to me, and I'll be there to help them and guide them. Today, I would have to say that you must be probably one of the needles in the haystacks around the country, because we don't hear a lot about that. We don't even see an article about that in the trades. And that's what's missing. And I don't know. Now it's got me turning. We may talk after the podcast about maybe putting an article together. Might be worthwhile. Might be worthwhile. So, how do you define being someone worth being?
I try to live my life one day at a time. I don't necessarily, um, I don't know. I'm not much of a planner. I try to plan because my wife tells me I'm supposed to and put everything in the schedule, but I try to live my life one day at a time. And I try to, um, every day I wake up, I try to either go to work or stay at home and, do stuff around the house or play dad and, raise my kids. I treat everybody at the firehouse like I do. Um, I don't want to say I treat them like my kids, but I treat them like my kids because I'm raising two young children who are gonna, I am basically their childhood. I'm the one that plays with them and they're gonna remember forever. And I'm the one that shows them what life is about and they're gonna remember forever. So in doing that, you're molding people's minds into something that is more wise and more knowledgeable with life skills than they currently are. So when I tell my son, hey, if we're going to open a door for somebody, if we're going to go through a door and someone's coming, we're going to hold the door open, and you teach your kids that. You teach your kids to look both ways when they cross the street. And it's something that you remember forever or you do forever. And if I didn't teach them that, my kids would be ran over 15 times in front of my house, or they, slam doors in people's faces and don't be kind gentlemen. I'm trying to raise them to be somebody's husband one day, and I'm trying to raise them to be someone's dad one day. So in doing that, I think of that kind of as the firehouse, where if I want experienced firemen that know what they're doing on the job at the firehouse, I need to be the dad figure to teach them step by step, starting absolutely with the basics of this is how we clean the firehouse. This is how we wash the truck. This is how we leave in the morning. We clean up all the coffee cups. We make sure the dishes are put away. It's the little things. Even like, so our rookies, our new guys wake up at probably 6:15 because the station doesn't need to wake up until 7. So they wake up at 6:15, they put the flag up, they empty the dishwasher. But if they empty the dishwasher by slamming the dishes into the cabinets and they wake everybody up, that's one thing you only got to tell them once because the entire station's going to tell them, "What are you doing with the dishes?" Because you woke all of us up, you know? So it's the little things in life that some things you only need to say once, some things you need to reiterate once in a while. But if you live life the way that you want other people, if you treat people the way that you want to be treated, then you're teaching them to treat other people the way they should be treated.
Right.
So, and there's always rising in the firehouse, but when the smiles are no longer smiles and you're hurting people's feelings and you're messing with them, and you don't want to put a negative connotation on the firehouse. You
Right.
want them to want to be there. They hit the lottery to get the job. you know they apply with 100 other people and they got the top 5 on the list to get hired. They hit the lottery, and they did what they needed to do to get there. They want to be there. Don't make it a negative place to not want to be there anymore, because they'll go
Right.
somewhere else.
Right. Good point. I was cursed and blessed at the very same moment in '92 when I had my back injury and um, became disabled, medically disabled. My girls were 7 and 10 at that time. So, as it turned out, Daddy got to raise his girls because my wife was working. She left the house 7:30 every morning to teach, and I would drive them to their private school, and I would pick them up from private school. Once in a while, we had some carpools, but I took them from those ages to become young women, and they are both very successful. Uh, our younger daughter gave us our first grandchild, who's 3 years old, although the size of a 4-year-old, according to the doctor. But I got to enjoy not only just seeing them grow up, but being part of them growing up and teaching just like you did. And they follow through today. One's 42 and one's 39, and they're still people oriented and caring and supportive of charitable causes, good charitable causes. And we didn't tell them to do it. We just showed them what we were doing. And we were very lucky to have 2 wonderful women now as our daughters. And they still remember that time that we spent together. It was, probably a good 4 years, 5 years. And then they moved out, got into college and went up there and dragged up to UCF and, under construction forever. And, and, back and forth would travel. My daughter got a job there at a synagogue and she wanted us to come up for the first Sabbath. So, yeah, we jumped in the car, got a hotel room, and went there. It was wonderful to see her read because she passed, and they hired her as the one of the main readers of the scrolls for them for the next 3 years. And both girls finished college early. One was able to graduate a year early. The other one graduated a semester early. And they both went overseas as well as part of their schooling. So I know that exactly what you're talking about, and especially with your kids, your boys. People say, well, didn't you want a son? I said, I would have, whatever the good Lord wanted to bless us with, I was happy with that. And that was the most important. And then it's my job, our job as parents, to do the very best we can to help them. And, like I said, thank God, they both are doing very well. And I think it's because of the fact how my wife and I took care of them. I can't think, I really can't think of one time I actually yelled at the girls. I can't think of it. I could say, stop, don't do that. I never had to raise my voice in rage, about something. And I think that says a lot about not just our rearing, but the kind of kids they were at that time. And they still living at that same dream as adults today. And I think what you're talking about can make, if we give it our best, can make a big difference for our children. And will also, in this case that we're talking about, it's going to make a better firefighters of the new rookies who are coming in, because they find out in your department that they're cared about. People, you're not just a time card. You are a person. You are a human. You have your strengths. You have your foibles. No different than anybody else. Nobody in that firehouse or any firehouse is perfect. We all come with flaws.
Mhm.
And it's how we deal with them and how the leadership helps them become the best firefighters they can be. And I think that's the key message is that you give here, is that the firehouse is not a place. Yes, there's hazing, in good heart, it's hazing. Once it turns the other way, that's when it's the officer's job to stop it and stop, put up the do not pass go sign. But otherwise, you're giving them a really warm, welcoming place to come to work. Not that they know about it that much, but they're going to see how well they're treated as long as they carry their load as well. But we need to duplicate what you're doing at hundreds of stations across the country, both career and volunteer. We need to know, and it's funny when Chief Tony Correa was on one time, and I said, I'm going to be talking about cause and origin. He goes, well, Steve, it's supposed to be origin and cause. I said, no, it doesn't work for the script, though. We were writing a TV script at that time for a limited series show about the Philadelphia Fire Department. But he says, the first thing you have to do it should be retention, because if you can't keep the people you have, how are you going to recruit anybody new? If you have people walking out of the station saying, this place sucks, they don't care about anybody but themselves. They're all ego driven. That's not going to be a pleasant situation. But when they walk into your station with you, they get a whole different early purview of what this firehouse is all about and this department is all about. Because you're not the only one who's doing it. This is all of your stations. Every captain, every lieutenant is doing the same thing, because that's how they've been told to keep the people coming, is by treating them like human beings, not like slaves, or just give them you have to wash the toilet without somebody flushing. That was one of the worst things I ever heard as a haze for a rookie. But you just shouldn't do anything like that.
They're not employees. They're not just numbers. They're people.
Right, exactly. They're not just numbers. They're not just employees. They are people, and they have the same strengths and faults that many of us do. But they're not indifferent. They have emotions like we do. Sometimes, yeah. Listen, we see crap that we don't want anybody else to have to ever see. But the fact is, we still have to be professional about it and know how to handle it. The most important thing is that if it's a tough call, that they can come back to the station and be debriefed and help. I grew up, I joined in the time of the suck it up time. There was no strong initiative, behavioral health initiative. We had a terrible call, guy trapped in a pickup truck overturned. That was one of the old Chevy trucks where the gas cap was right behind the driver's door. And it came out, skidded, sparks lit him up. The chief was screaming for water. We pulled, it was only Rich and I and Bruce, our driver, our caretaker for that day. And He goes, I don't care. Don't even hook up to the hydrant. We'll do a reverse leg. He says, just get me water. And Rich and I got the hose going. And with our last drop, we got the fire out. EMS at that time, the EMS ops director was the only one who had a Hearst tool, hydraulic tool. And so he finally showed up. We got the guy out. He lived for 3 days in a burn unit, but unfortunately passed. The smell, as a lot of fires know, is horrible. You can burn a steak to a cinder crisp on a barbecue, and you'll never know the same of when human flesh burns. And so we got it all done, got them out, packed up, came back to the station, cleaned the truck down. Then I went into the locker room and threw up and crying and tearing. And it was probably the single worst call that I had that way. And Bruce saw me coming out to put my gear back on the rack, and he says, "You all right?" I said, "Yeah, kind of." He says, "Was it the call?" I said, "Yeah." He goes, "We'll suck it up." I said, "What?" He goes, "This is what you're going to see in the fire service. Just suck it up." I said, "No, I don't suck it up. I teach people to emote. They have emotions. You can't just lock it up and be a stone. You have a beating heart inside that chest of yours." I said, "It's got to bother you. Any death on a call has to bother you at some point. Doesn't always haunt you like this one does." And my buddy Rich and I, whenever we're together, we almost always talk about that call.
Yeah.
That's one of the two calls that we always talk about, just to get it off of each other, And here we are. I was in 78, 79. Here we are in 24. Long time ago.
Still there.
It's still there. Right. And we didn't have any debriefing. We didn't have any talking it out. Thank goodness that your department, your people do. They know they can always approach their officer, and almost any officer probably.
Mhm.
And I just need some help. That call was bugging me, last shift. I just can't get over. Okay, let's sit and talk about it. And that's probably the most important thing that you bring to the game, is that you're not robots, you're not automatons, you are humans who are giving of themselves, possibly making an ultimate sacrifice to help people you don't even know.
Yep.
And there's nothing more valiant than that cause, when we take that oath. And that's, I think, something very much familiar. So let's just close off. I didn't mark it when I was reading the bio, but we're talking about a little bit. That's mentorship. So let's just close with a couple of minutes of how you define mentorship and how you see it.
Well, that's part of the being someone worth being. It's when you want to go out, and everybody finds mentors. Some of them are when you're new. Some of them are when you're becoming more seasoned in the fire service. Some of them are just life coaches. And there's several mentors that I picked out early on that they didn't realize that they were mentors. I might not have ever told them that they were mentors, but there's stuff that I still live by today that I picked up from them, and it makes me a better officer. It makes me a better fireman. It makes me a better person. First and foremost is my parents. You learn from them at a very young age, and you learn from them to how to be a person, how to live life. All going all through grade schools, and then when you start your career and you're starting the fire service, you find somebody that's more seasoned, and it's somebody that you want to be like. You don't necessarily mirror them exactly, but you pick up little things here and there throughout the years that you can always bounce stuff off of them, or you can always use their experience as knowledge for you to gain. And Sir Isaac Newton said forever ago, if I have ever seen further than others, it is by standing upon the shoulders of giants. And I wrote that down earlier today thinking about it. And I wanted to bring that up because if you're going to see further and move on beyond what somebody can teach you, it's by finding the giants and standing on their shoulders because there's somebody worth being, you
Very
know?
true. Good. Well
And
said.
and that is earning when you pick mentors and you start learning and becoming better in the fire service, that is your way of earning that baton when it's finally given to you. So in doing that, and when you're given it, you live your life and do your thing for other people so that you can pass that baton on to them.
And of course, I'd be remiss if we didn't give you a chance to tell us a little bit about AEST Fire and Safety.
Yeah, so along with AEST, I ended up starting my own business this past year, 239 Fire Training and Consultant. So um, I'm available basically to help fire departments with if they need certain kind of training. From the Great Florida Fire School, I was doing hose line management classes and consulting on hose loads and hydraulic flows and pump charts and stuff like that. But in my cadres that I taught with, um, search stuff and aspects with Joey DeVito doing tick tips and thermal imaging classes, but still to this day, like I'm a live fire instructor. This week, actually, we're burning a neighborhood in Fort Myers that is old, like Section 8 housing.
Right.
So we're doing live burns there for our countywide resources. Um, but there's people always asking people, hey, what are you doing? What hose loads are you doing? What nozzles are you using? What are you guys doing for pumping? Blah, 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 blah. The fire service has so many different aspects.
Right.
So I started my own business and then I got picked up with AEST Fire Safety. They were kind of a mom and pop shop dealer out of North Carolina, and they were looking to expand their regions. So now they have me in Florida, and it kind of fell in my lap, to be honest with you, because for my department, I was trying to test hose. I was getting different manufacturers' hose so that we can we could progress in our high rise operations. And one of the companies, Mercedes Textiles, has hose that's been around for like 50 years. And I was trying to get it in Florida to borrow it or demo it. And there wasn't anybody in Florida that sold it. So I called around and figured out who the Southeast regional sales manager is. And hey, I need some hose. Well, funny story. We don't have anybody in Florida. 6 months later, fast forward, I'm Ron Givens and I sell Mercedes hose in the entire state of Florida. So AEST, yeah, I fell in love with them. They're very homegrown, Southern, very wholesome people. Um, they think about the fire department first. They don't care to make a sale. They care to make relationships, and that's kind of how I live. That we'd rather help a fire department by providing product, but making the relationship is more so because we're not here for the sale. We're here for life. We want to
Right.
make you a customer for life.
Right.
So we make them happy. We provide excellent customer service because one of the biggest things in at least being a fire department purchaser in Florida is it's really hard to find follow through after a sale is made. Hey, try to figure out what to do because something broke. Is it under warranty? Can we get some help with it? It seems a little more difficult to find the right answers on what to do with it than, um, I mean, we can buy from anybody.
Right. Right.
So I just try to provide the follow through afterwards of maintaining customer service, making relationship, keeping departments happy, and fixing their problem by, if they need new hose, I sell them new hose. If they need new nozzles, I'll get them new nozzles. So it's 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 a whole new learning curve. It's
Right. Right.
it's the private sector. So I've always been a fireman. I've always been in the public sector. So wanted to try something new to also remain in the fire service for one day when I hang up the coat and the helmet for the last time.
Right. Right. Well, that's great. And wish you much success with that. And Ron, I can't thank you enough I know you have a really busy schedule, but I'm glad we finally were able to get together. And I love the topics that we've touched on today, because to tell you the truth, if we don't talk about these issues, then we're not going to be good firefighters. We won't have a good cohesive department. Everybody at everybody else's throat. We got to realize who we are. And we have the same goals. And we have to work with each other and live with each other.
Mhm.
And I think you really attacked that very, very well. And again, my thanks for taking time out to join us
No
today.
problem, Steve. Great. Thank
Appreciate
you.
it. Folks, if you're watching the video, this will be the end of the interview. If you're listening to the audio, well, you know, we're going to take a little break, have a couple of public service announcements, and then we'll be back with a little bit more. But our sincere thanks to Captain Ron Givens, wishing him a very safe career, but it won't be the last time we reach out to him. I'll tell you that much. With this kind of wonderful interview and the topics that he chooses, and you know, I think basically you're bringing humanity into the firehouse. That's what it is. Not just bringing in firefighters, bringing humanity to the firehouse. We got to remember that. That's the bottom line. And Stone
Absolutely.
Cold says so, right?
Yeah.
All right, folks. Thanks for tuning in. We'll be back next week with, once again, a great guest. Chief Dave Robertson will be joining us. Thanks for tuning in, and we'll see you next week. Take care.